Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of the City of London, Alderman Nicholas Lyons, distinguished guests and friends all. I greet you today at what is an important juncture for us in our conversation on how we can save and safeguard our future. The simple fact is that when it comes to matters of climate justice, financing a just transition and the transformation towards reaching net zero is a process both, not an event. It is a process that calls for honest and frank conversation. It is one that requires a common and unified understanding, and it is one that demands action that is built upon a national, regional, and global industrial strategy. A just industrial strategy, I might add. The context in which we have this conversation today is a complex one, but a necessary one. Complex because if the world is to truly reduce its greenhouse gas emissions to the scale and pace that we need, we will need approximately $1.5 trillion per year of investment in green transformation in developing countries. Complex because while developing countries have contributed the least to the stock of greenhouse gases that have led to global warming, as production and growth have shifted over the last few decades, they now represent almost 2/3 of current emissions, 63%. This figure will only rise as they continue to raise incomes per head towards those of rich countries. So simply put, my friends, the starting point for this conversation we just have today is that there is currently no pathway in which the planet's temperatures remain below critical tipping points, which does not involve a rapid green transformation in the industrializing emerging markets. Equally, that transition must also happen in the established developed countries whose stock contributed to us being here in the first place. My friends, this is the honest and frank conversation that we must have. It is the one we must contend with and explore even as we meet here today and of course beyond today. And if we are to go have an understanding, we must first understand that like many things in life, there is good news and yes, there's bad news. The good news is that many countries recognize that this transformation represents an excellent industrial strategy. It is good business. The bad news is that the initial transformation is highly capital intensive and a heavy user of foreign exchange, and the high capital costs are in fact stalling the transformation. Indeed, the disparity in the cost of capital between the global north and the south is a major stumbling block. In the developed world, 81% of green transformation investments are financed by the private sector, underscoring that these projects, yes, could be commercially viable. But in the developing world, only 14% of these investments are funded by the private sector. That is the disparity to which I just referred. You may ask, what is the difference? Blocking this vital flow of private capital in the developing world is the much higher risk that premium private investors require for investing in the same projects in the developing world as they might invest in the developed world. The cost of capital for project promoters in developing countries makes the same projects there unprofitable. So therefore, there is little investment or development of a pipeline of investable projects, and the government's idea of developing countries having to fill the gap directly and indirectly through several means cannot carry those projects to reality and to execution. The reality is that we do not have the scale or the pace needed in order to be able to fuel these kinds of investments in the global south. This is an unfortunate reality, my dear friends. It is said that when you have a hammer, all you see are nails. And so the reality for many of us is that when you tell project financiers that the cost of capital is too high, yes, they try to find every possible means to fix the issue. By fixing the issue, I mean they try to perfect the design of contracts or provide project or policy guarantees, because ultimately they believe the fault lies with the government policy, and honestly, they think that this is the nail to the hammer. Colleagues, this is just one part of the greater challenge. The root of the problem is an international financial system that punishes the unfamiliar, yes, the countries that they don't know enough about. And it only has two gears for developing countries. Too fast for a third of the time and too slow for the rest of the time. We are entering this period of too slow, just as we need a surge of investment. And we need a surge of investment in order to have mitigation, because it doesn't matter where the mitigation takes place, whether in the south or the north, it just matters that it takes place on the planet Earth. And the cause of the retreat of capital, especially in the global south, is rising interest rates in places perceived to be safe as well, and unsustainable debt levels in many countries after the multiple crises of COVID and fuel and food. Indeed, we are told that there are about 52 countries that are effectively placed on debt row. My friends, this cannot be right or acceptable. We simply must find the means to address these challenges that confront us. It is all the more important that we do so as time for our peoples, our communities, our societies, as I've just said, is so short. We had only last week an indication that we will reach 1.5 at some point or another, even though it will not be sustained yet. That is not good news. Following, therefore, much conversation and due diligence, we have formulated a global industrial strategy that can inspire the regional and national industrial strategies. In the Bridgetown Initiative 2.0, we propose a new agency which will sit at the heart of the ecosystem of the multilateral development banks and the IMF. This agency would use a counter-cyclical mandate, the capital and liquidity to support that diversification from the entire ecosystem of development banks, expertise in developing countries to provide a long-term foreign exchange hedge that removes the average overpayment for foreign exchange risk when the flow to finance to emerging markets is too slow for the long-run investment that we need. These actions would boost the expected currency hedge returns for green projects in developing countries by 3 to 4% a year. That is enough to mainstream these projects and to put them in the portfolios of long-term investors. If we establish counter-cyclical mechanisms like this to unblock finance to developing countries, we can trigger a flow of global investment, of jobs, and of growth that will benefit us all, yes, while saving the planet. To all gathered, I therefore say to you that we know the causes and challenges that we confront. Equally, we have solutions. But what we need is your help to press these ideas into action and reality, and to allow us to confront those challenges equally with the fortitude that we can deconstruct and reconstruct, and that we can make things happen across this world in order to save the planet. Join us and let us grasp this moment. I thank you.